Welcome to Artcasters, episode 248. I don't hear a dog, but there is a filter.
Okay.
But anyhow, so welcome to Artcasters, episode 248. This is a show where we talk about the ins and outs of freelance illustration, graphic design, comic, cartooning, and just the whole gamut of the creative world. But generally, we tend to stick to like a lot of topics around comics and animation because that's kind of what all our jam is. So anyhow, this week we have a special guest, and before we get into introducing them, we'll just do go around and tell everybody where they can find our work. So you're on my channel. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell, and that way you can get notified whenever there's something live or a new video posted. And other than that, you can find my stuff at joshua.kimball.com, and you can buy a music album of mine on Spotify or actually you don't have to buy it there. It's free, called The Bottle Better Than. So that's cool. And then you can also see a preview of my soon-to-be published book at quarterlystories.com. Keeman just joined us in the chat. Hey, Keeman. All right. Let's go to you, Scott. Scott, where can everybody find your work and check out your stuff? And also, where can they watch your awesome new live streams?
Yeah. So the live streams you can find at YouTube on my YouTube channel, Circworks on YouTube. I have a series called Making Comics 101, and I am sort of bringing that back, but in a live format. So I basically take any kind of comic making questions. I launched the first one on Tuesday of this week, and it seemed to go pretty well. So I'm hoping to do more of those, maybe every other week. I'll see. And then also on a couple things next week, I will be launching my new digital product called the Amazing Comic Book World Builder. I'm super excited about that. So if you guys are subscribed to my newsletter, and basically if you've signed up for the Comic Maker Starter Kit from my website, then you should be on my newsletter. But pay attention to that, because on Monday I'm going to be sending out a newsletter, and I am going to have there's going to be a free comic book font in there that you can download, and plus an exclusive video and some art hacks and stuff like that. So look for that. And if you aren't subscribed to my newsletter, all you have to do is go to my website and just click on the thing it says something like, how to make comics or something like that. And it's, basically you download the Comic Maker Starter Kit and then you'll enroll in the newsletter. So that's coming out. And also on my website, I've got a new sale with some of my kind of Halloween, anything that I thought was a little more towards the Halloween thing, whether it's digital or physical. So of course, my comic books, because it's about zombies, all my avatar builders, because they're kind of like costumes, that you can build, my comic book or my Halloween style font combo, which is Jeepers Creepers, and then my how to kill monsters prints and things like that. So anything that's kind of Halloween is on sale right now at my website. You can check that out, and that's all I got going on.
Nice. And then our special guest this week is our good friend, practically the third co-host of our show. You guys probably know him from the 48-hour art check, and also from the awesome Mr. Miyagi GIF, and as well as Animal. So our guest today is Cory Kerr. Cory, where can everybody check out your art, your animations, and all that fun stuff?
You can check all that stuff out at corykerr.com. So it's just CORYKERR.com. And I recently updated that so that it's got its own animation section. So I kind of have been animating stuff for just under 2 years, I think. And I finally decided to gather all that in one spot.
Nice.
So, yeah, so that's there. And I'm on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and whatever stuff, random stuff like that.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody go check out Cory's stuff, and so we didn't really have a topic today, so we thought we'd just kind of do a roundtable and talk about stuff. And I think right now our brains are pretty cluttered. There's an election, there's a lot of like political stuff going on, and so that and deadlines and all that. And crazy things going on all over the world, and I think we're all kind of at a point of just being pretty swamped and cluttered, and kind of I think it might be good for us to just have like a roundtable discussion. So why don't we just talk about how like our work weeks are going so far, and see if like a topic arrives, and if not, we'll just kind of enjoy the conversation. So
Sure.
So you wanna get off about like how's your work week?
Yeah. Well, so let's see what I've been basically, anyone that's not kind of following what I'm doing lately, I'm trying to work on Amazon KDP, which is the Kindle Direct Publishing, where you publish books. Mainly I'm doing like coloring books and things. So published, I had a new book that just, it's like the first, because sometimes it takes a while for those to get approved. This one was approved in like a day, which I was surprised. That's the first time, because usually they say like 72 hours, but this one was approved like right away. So I just got a new coloring book out. Oh, and also, if you guys are curious what kind of coloring books I'm doing, I am showing one off in that newsletter, so you can check that out. But so anyway, so I've been doing that, and also I've been doing T-shirts. So I'm working on some different T-shirt designs.
Nice.
But something interesting that might spark a topic. I went to my local comic book store, which I hadn't been to in a little while. So I kind of went in there, and I was worried. Obviously, I was kind of worried about it because comic book stores in general are it's kind of like almost like a dying thing, and with everything else that's going on. So I went in there, and the other thing is they stopped carrying all the comic. I was buying all the Alterna comics, and Alterna kind of moved away from Diamond, and they're like independent, so they're not carrying them. So I don't have anything in my pull box anymore. So I just went in just kind of see what was going on. I picked up a few titles and found some cool stuff.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Explain that. Alterna's not carried by Diamond anymore?
No. Well, I think DC moved away from Diamond too, but because you just can't not carry DC, I suppose. So yeah.
Did DC move away from Diamond or just pick up additional distributors?
I don't know. I'm not positive. But anyway, the interesting thing that I discovered was that I was talking to my comic book store, and the thing is, they're having an event this weekend. They've got Ray Park, who played Darth Maul. I guess he's going to go and do a signing there and everything. So another artist that we had on the show, Eric Henson, who did he actually worked on an alternate title, Eden. He did like a sketch cover, a really cool Darth Maul sketch cover. So they want to know if I could do one. I'm like, yeah, I could probably do that before Saturday. And so anyway, so I go up to. Basically, I had all my comics in my hand. I go up there and put them on the desk, and he pulls it. He just gives me it was a Star Wars #1 sketch cover comic, and he gave me that, and basically he ended up paying me. So I had to get all these comics. So it's kind of a cool thing, and I just wanted to kind of help him out. I wasn't going to charge him a whole lot, but what I found out was that he said he was doing really well. He was saying that because people can't go out, there's a lot of things they can't do, that his business is doing good, which surprised me because I know he seemed like he was doing a lot of sales at conventions and things too, which went away, but it sounded like those were kind of the thing, like it's a pretty big expense and it's a lot of work and everything when you do these conventions, because he's paying for not just a table or a couple of tables, but a whole booth and everything. But he was saying that they were doing good, so that was kind of nice to hear, because you don't hear that so much. You're like, this is just going to destroy all the comic book stores. So that was kind of cool to hear, and kind of a welcome little bit of news. So, and he invited me to if I wanted to come and do signing, but I don't know. It's hard enough to do stuff at conventions when there's all these celebrities, and if you just got, an artist plus a big celebrity, I mean, I don't, and plus I don't know that I want to, stay in a little comic book store for a day, with everything else that's going on. I told them, as soon as things hopefully come back to normal, I'd love to get back and doing signings and stuff like that, because that was really cool.
Yeah.
So,
that's come across my mind a little bit. Like, how are we supposed to navigate, signings and stuff? Like, I've definitely been thinking about that a little bit with the, like, now that I have a publisher, like, there will be a release date, and I would hope that by the time the book's out, that there's some sort of vaccine or something, and like a better handle on this madness. But if there isn't, like, it does bring up like a really interesting conundrum of like how to promote, especially a book, and keep in mind, like, that actually has a more severe impact on, I think, indies than it would on like mainstream titles, because I don't think Jim Lee's gonna be like having like massive hits on his sales because of COVID, like to the extent that like an indie creator would for like not being able to have a signing, because like signings are a really great tool for indie creators to be able to kind of sit amongst the big, knowns, and it's a great way for people to discover unknowns. So it's an interesting conundrum. I don't know if that's where you were heading with it, but that is something I've been thinking about. Like, I don't really know how you navigate that,
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, like you said, hopefully by the time you're ready to do that. But I mean, it'll definitely give you some time to think, because I think, I really do like going out and doing signings and sketches and stuff like that. And I mean, obviously your comic book's a little bit different, but it's also very personal. And I think people would be open to, to that. And because of the nature of the story and everything, I'm sure there's some, I hate to say niche audiences, but yeah, kind of. I mean, that might have similar stories or whatever, that you might be able to, find some places to do, a store signing and everything.
Yeah,
I know you were kind of like, I don't know if the average like Christian bookstore would be interested, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like, I don't know. It still seems like there might be a place for it in some of these Christian bookstores.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, I don't think that's my market.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely think it'd be cool if Christians bought it, but I do think it would be more of like a regular comic shop kind of thing. Or like, I mean, the only problem is like finding that literary audience, that would be the tough part. But I think like bookstores even might be a good route. The only problem with that is like, how do you navigate that? Like with the COVID thing, like I don't know. I think like Cory, you've recently kind of had that too with like, were things normal, like your animation would have like premiered, at quite a few film festivals that it didn't. And
I had over a 40% like success rate on film festivals until February of this year, and then suddenly I wasn't getting into any film festivals.
Right?
So I was in I can't remember, but anyway, it started to pick up, and I started to get back in. Started being selected for film festivals again. So either that's coincidence, or they just didn't want to refund anybody their money.
Yeah.
But there's been some interesting things. Like they've had, I've been featured in some festivals that were in person normally, but they've switched to like an online situation. But it was like they made sure that it was like encrypted, and that only people who had paid for tickets could view it. And so they went through like the hoops to make sure that it wasn't like released publicly for the film festival, that it was still closed. Which is, it was interesting. I mean, I did a remote director's interview for one of them, where they pre-recorded an interview that played after my short, just asking me about it, stuff like that. And so it's been, it's worked out okay. I feel like it's, given the circumstances, it's been all right.
Yeah, it's just interesting to know, like, if you were, like luckily, you weren't, like, you have other means to kind of get your work out there. But if you had been like putting all your eggs in the festival basket,
yeah, I mean, if
moving forward would be really hard to, I think, figure out.
Yeah, if festivals were like part of my livelihood, I would have starved.
Yeah.
Because they just shut down. There's just no way to do it. And so, and I mean, I had tickets to a conference that got shut down. I had, all kinds of different things that have been happening. It's kind of interesting. And then I teach at a university, and that's kind of fascinating to watch how that's kind of unfolding.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very strange. I don't buy into this idea of this being the new normal, though. Like, no. I don't know. Yeah, I almost don't want to dive into this topic because I'm so sick of talking about it. But
yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't have to be the topic. It was just more of like, for me, I guess, like, it's been interesting, like, I'm trying to think of ways to promote the book. And
right.
One of the standard ways for an indie book is in person. Like, that is one of the big hacks.
Right. Yeah.
And so it is interesting to realize, like, that tool is out of the toolkit right now.
Right. And it's also
kind of cool here. There's comic stores that are not, like, the comic shop isn't being affected by sales, like in your area, Scott. Like, that's pretty awesome to hear.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think challenges drive innovation, and they drive change. And so you look at, like, one thing that I'm trying to get that I think students are starting to understand is universities are very inefficient and horrible ways to merely distribute information. And so if you're, like, going to school just to get an information dump, just subscribe to Skillshare and go to YouTube. Like, there are people like me and Scott and stuff that are producing really high quality content. And if you're only there for, like, information dump, it's a really expensive and inefficient way of doing that. And so there's a lot of value to, like, the transformative nature of education and like learning memorized facts or learning software or something is only part of the education. Like, the real part of it, I think, is, like, learning critical thinking and learning creative thinking and like having your thoughts challenged. Like, there's no YouTube video that's going to challenge your thoughts because you can just turn it off. But if you, like, are in a class and the class is challenging your preconceived notions of something, that you can't just leave. Like, you're in that class. And so you have to, like, come to grips with conflicting ideas. There's a lot of value in all of that. The interesting thing about it is, how does that work when you're not allowed to be in the same room, or that being in the same room is dangerous, or that I'm currently teaching behind the plexiglass wall with a face shield and a mask on, and, like, I've got half my class remote, like in like Ellen DeGeneres, where I've got, like, TVs with people's faces on them. Yeah. And then the other half of the class
only
is,
a step away, Cory. So you're like, and look under your desks, everyone gets a new iPad.
And you get an iPad, and you get an iPad. But
that's crazy. Like, because one of the biggest pet peeves I have about a lot of directions that especially private colleges are going in, and I'm glad like yours isn't, which is good. But I have seen this trend, especially with a lot of religious schools, where they are gutting the humanities because of the cuts in enrollment due to COVID. They're cutting humanities programs, and they're only kind of retaining and bolstering like job related things. But what you were just describing, I think, is kind of like one of the core values of college is that it's not just a trade school. And there are trades you can learn, and there's value you can add to a workplace, but there's a holistic area to education that kind of sees past just profit motive and also goes more into deeper things that do affect profit motive, like in the long term, but have more to do with like you were saying, like engaging critical thinking and mentorship and relationship and learning how to think and learning how to philosophize and learning how to kind of approach things from a different angle. And it kind of allows for a lot of experimentation that you kind of can't do under conditions of like just the profit motive.
Well,
and it's like so valuable for people who learn these tools, because like when they get out into society, it can be a real contribution, like not just to monetary systems, but to social systems, to like, you know, the local, whatever organization is going on locally, like they can be a positive member of society. So there's so much value. I know it's a long-winded way of saying it, but it's just like, it disturbs me thinking how colleges, as a lot of colleges push more and more towards just trade and practical value, and kind of throw out the humanities, how they're going to navigate. And thinking about it, like it's really hard to have a lot of that deeper learning in a COVID type environment, because I think about like what value I got from school, and a lot of it was not just sitting through a lecture,
right,
but sitting through a lecture and then having that one-on-one moment where I'm drawing a certain way, and my instructor would be like, hey, your arm like here is like you're drawing too tight, like you got to loosen up or whatever. Like just a little offhand comment that might have more implication and more value than anything I would have gotten from like a lecture. And I was trying to think like, so I'm curious to hear, but like, how do you navigate that? Like, how do you have personal one-on-one interactions, like in this scenario where you're like you were saying, like a big glass thing. And I mean, that's
it's really one of the, I've just had to be really frank with people and say, like at the beginning of the semester, I was like, all right, let's talk about all the things that are hard remotely, you know, and let's just get it out there. Cause I think like my philosophy in most things is that sunshine is the best disinfectant, right?
Yeah.
Things that are hidden, either become awkward or toxic. You know what I mean? Like it becomes, and so one of the things about like a room full of 25 people trying to have a discussion in a classroom setting, but everyone is sitting on their bed in their apartment, is like, you can't just raise your hand and talk. Like for one, I can't necessarily see everybody at the same time. Like and for me as a lecturer, what's really difficult is, Frank just said, I have to be really Cory with people at times. That happens. And that must be really hard for them. But yeah, normally I'll be demonstrating, I'll be lecturing, and I didn't realize how many little cues I used from my students to gauge whether or not they were understanding or still with me. Yeah. Like you can kind of hear them like shifting in their seat, and you know you're losing them, or you start to see them tilt their head and kind of squint, and you know that they're confused. Yeah. But like this is like, it's like when the lockdown first happened and comedians tried to do comedy over Zoom. It doesn't work. Like you there's no audience response, and so you're talking to silence. Yeah. So that was one thing. And so anyway, I said, oh, you know what stops you? And we're talking about like, well, I start talking at the same time as somebody else starts talking, or like it takes me a couple seconds to like unmute myself and then wait for the computer to unmute me, because there's like a delay between pushing that button and when your mic actually turns back on. And by that point in time, like the normal flow of a conversation has been disrupted and it feels weird.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, it's very strange. It's very strange. But then to get past also, you can't, people that are in the same room as you, I can't see most of their face. It's like the inverse of superheroes where they're wearing masks up here.
Yeah.
Like everyone is covered from like the nose down. And so if I can't get it from their eyebrows or from their eyes, like I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And also this has been a problem for me for years. I don't know if I have hearing loss, but I have trouble hearing things, when there's other noise around. And so I'm realizing that I naturally read people's lips a little bit for understanding.
Yeah.
That's gone. So, you know, there's a ton of those challenges, but there are some really huge upsides. Like, upsides is like, some of the upsides are, instead of me showing, you know, here's Illustrator, and it's like 20 feet away from them on a projector screen, it's on their screen 12 inches from their face. And it's much easier now when they're like, oh yeah, I was having a problem, and you know, I was in After Effects and like this happened, and I'm like, pull it up. And so they share their screen and everybody gets to watch, and I can draw on their screen. Nice. And so instead of like what I used to have to do is like lift up the screen and then like draw over the projector on the whiteboard. So the projector would be hitting the whiteboard and I would like do crits like on whiteboard. Well, now I'm doing that digitally and I've got more tools. So instead of like freehanding it with a whiteboard marker, I can make squares and circles, and I can draw with my stylus. And so there are some upsides to it, but like that personal connection, because one of the most seminal studies of success of people that are successful after college is, one of the key indicators is if they feel like they have a personal relationship with at least one professor. Yeah. And so like you're not going to get much out of the class where there's like 150 people in the class and there's some guy sitting like 100 feet away from you and he's about like an inch tall. Yeah. He's got a little microphone and he's droning on about whatever, right?
Yeah, but like so art history classes.
So, yeah, don't get me started on art history classes. But but what they found is, you know, the students who take the time to like go to the office hours and like, you know, speak to the professors face to face and work with them and whatever. I mean, that's when I have students in tears. That's when I get to know them. I mean, that's when I have like, you know, real heart to hearts and stuff like that. And I'm still doing that on Zoom. You know, I'm still able to have office hours, and they've got a little waiting room so that I can have a private conversation with somebody if I need to or whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, there's challenges and everything. And but there's also some upsides. But it is the reason I brought that up is I think it's interesting that students now have to grapple with, you know, before the difference between, you know, education and YouTube was one was on my computer and the other one I was in a classroom.
Yeah.
And now they're both on your computer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you know, that might have some good connotations though, because there is a difference. And I think that like, I think that one upside to this whole thing is I think people will value that difference more. Like if we're able to have in-person courses again, I think that people are going to really value that. Like, especially having had a taste of what it's like having none of that. However, it also might have the positive benefit of making institutions more open to remote learning and remote teaching, which I think was the way we were going to head anyway. And so it might kind of accelerate that course a little bit, which I think can open up some possibilities, like some of the things you just discussed. Like there's some huge upsides to learn.
And the school that I teach at has been doing remote learning for a long time, and actually has a program where tuition is based on like the median income of the country. And so in some countries that are like really impoverished, there's like almost no opportunity to get an education, but because they figured out a way to like teach people in Congo and Russia and Brazil and California and New Hampshire and, you know, wherever at the same time, through technology that's coming about and teaching modalities, they're able to keep costs down significantly. And so that's been really interesting to see other universities come to us and say, so you've been doing this for like 8 years now, you know, before all of this happened. Like, and so we're able to kind of help it. Like, that is an interesting thing, is like, you don't really think like one of the main indicators of success in a global economy is like speaking English, you know? And so if you're able to, like, that's one of the things that this program does, is like at the beginning, let's learn to speak English. And so they go through this immersive English program, and then they get them a GED, and then they can matriculate into an online university, or they can go get certificates or whatever. And anyway, but yeah, and Greg is describing one of the challenges with this is the digital divide. You know, he's saying, I teach in a place where students are living in hotels, sharing computers among whole families, et cetera. Some are trying to do all their work on their phones. And so like part of this is awesome because the technology is there. But like, if you got 4 kids, who has 5 computers in their home?
Yeah. So like,
you know what I mean?
A teacher in our district was talking about like they had some students who they found out were having to like do their homework at a Taco Bell.
Yep.
Because there's only access to Wi-Fi, and it's like that's really sad. And then aside from that, like I was thinking about like my son, like his age range, you know, they're all broadcasting from their homes. And so I was just thinking, if you're a kid in elementary school and you live in like not so great of a home or an area, like now you're having to expose that to your entire class.
Right.
Like that's pretty terrifying. Like there's a lot of weird things that like we've never really navigated as a society before, and are kind of problematic. And there's upsides too. Mike was mentioning his sister-in-law is trying to teach PE class over Zoom, and I mean that's I don't know how you do that either. Or like how do you do like weightlifting? You know, like how would you do personal training right now? You can't really like fully get an idea of somebody's form as they're lifting. It's an interesting conundrum. I don't know, like Scott. So like, what about you? Like, so you wouldn't do a signing right now? Like, and then if you were to do an in-store signing, like how would you even do the in-store signing? Like, would they do like a socially distant signing where you like, you kind of like maybe have like a pen attached to like a long stick?
Yeah, I really don't know, because here's the other thing. It's like, so they've got Ray Park doing this signing, and you know, obviously the way that works is you pay whatever it is, $50 or whatever, you get a picture with Ray Park or whatever.
Yeah.
But is he going to be wearing a mask? Are you going to be wearing a mask? I mean, it's kind of like, okay, we get this picture, but I mean, we can't see our faces half of them, you know. So it's kind of, I guess I don't know how that works. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so, and you know, the comic store is not a big place, and I don't know, you know, I know from other signings I've been at, or other events they've had, there's just a number of people there.
Yeah.
I mean, when I go to, because I already illustrated the cover and everything, I'm going to go bring it by, you know, on Saturday early, kind of before they just, but I wasn't going to probably stick around. So I don't know. I mean, it's for me, it's, I mean, I guess I don't worry so much. I don't want to I don't know if I want to get into this so much, but I don't worry so much about myself, but I don't want to spread it to anyone else or whatever. So,
Yeah.
and especially my parents. And so I just, if I did something like that, then I would probably have to like self quarantine after that or whatever. I don't know. It just doesn't seem, I'm just rather just kind of wait a little bit, because it's not that,
Yeah. It's just a weird thing. And that's why I'm like, I'm not trying to like do like I definitely don't want us to do like a long quarantine, related episode, because I think we're all pretty bored of talking about that. And frankly, like
too late.
Everybody in the chat are pretty bored of talking about that. But it does bring up like some conundrums, and like it is interesting. Like Cory, I like hearing how you're approaching navigating it, like in the sense of teaching. And I am kind of curious, like if that's going to be, a new thing. I also like Greg just said, we need to make the internet like a utility. And that's something kind of interesting that might come out of this too. Like people might start realizing like this is this tool that we all have is a pretty important one for like the structure of society right now. It's like, I think if people didn't have access to the internet, like, can you imagine all of us like trying to navigate this whole quarantine nonsense?
Yeah.
Well, that's Greg's point, is some of us don't have to imagine because they're living that,
Yeah.
And that's like, the idea of the digital divide is, well, okay. So this is something I'd be interested in talking about for a little bit.
Do it.
One of the biggest threats I see to like an existential threat to the way we see humanity right now is the internet and tech companies, and how the internet is perceived by society and how it's run and how it's managed. And right now, the internet has been used. So I'd say 5 years ago is kind of when everything started to end, but there was this Web 2.0, like early 2000s to fairly recently. It was kind of the Wild West, and it was an open environment to where the algorithms weren't efficient yet. They weren't good yet. And so like the best idea kind of rose to the top.
There were one or two people who had kind of figured out like how to game it, but which unfortunately the funny thing is the people who gamed it are a lot of the people who are the most upset about how rigid it is now.
Right.
And yet they're the reason the algorithms had to get this good, was like people abusing and gaming the algorithms made them really efficient at feeding us hysteria.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like, if anybody's watched like The Social Dilemma on Netflix or whatever, it's kind of a dramatized situation. I liked it. I feel like Zuboff, who's in that, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she wrote the book. She wrote the book on surveillance capitalism. But
that's because I've read that book. I have not watched the documentary yet.
Oh, you got to watch it. She's one of the people on the documentary. It's it's part documentary, part dramatization. But it's really it's less about what her book is about, and it's more about how the tech companies are actively trying to manipulate humanity to change in their interest. But the problem with today, and Greg's right, like the open web, we lost that battle. When we lost that, we lost the battle. I don't think it's over, but I do think it's coming to a head, because nowadays the best ideas are not rising to the top.
Yeah,
it's the stuff that's rising to the top is the stuff that feeds more eyeballs and more data to the advertisers, and that's the stuff that promotes violence and hate and aggression. And because when you get riled up, you tend to act more erratically, and when you're not thinking rationally, because you're angry or upset or sad or depressed or anxious or super excited or really jingoistic or whatever it is, you don't make rational decisions, which is what advertisers want, is they want impulsive consumers. And so like the algorithms are geared towards creating impulsivity. And so that's why you have like Pizzagate, and you have, white supremacy on the rise, and you have all this stuff, is because the algorithms, not necessarily intentionally, but kind of because of their apathy of, they don't really care. They're content agnostic as long as the money keeps rolling in. And so, I don't subscribe to the notion that like Zuckerberg is like a secret racist who really loves Nazis. I just think, whatever keeps the dollars rolling in, he's cool with, and he probably doesn't even think about it that much.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's another. So I don't think he is like this dark, evil person, but I do think he's a multi-billionaire who, whenever, like, it always cracks me up to see these congressional hearings where you have congressmen just like who are completely clueless about, and this is like every side of the aisle. Like, this is not like a partisan thing, but like everyone in government who's interviewing like these top CEOs of like mega, like corporations that are larger than corporations that have ever existed in history, with such a dynamic monopoly that like Bezos and Amazon, like Amazon could lose money for about a year and not see a dent in their profit. Like, meaning they're just kind of set. Like they're at an absurd level of monopoly where they can't even lose money losing money. And so these people are very powerful. They go in front of Congress and kind of play the, well, I'm just a guy who pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and like, we're just this struggling business and we could just collapse at any moment. And like, like they'll kind of play the startup card, which all of them started as like young, scrappy entrepreneurs or whatever. But you kind of can't play that card when you're the wealthiest person on the planet. Like, and yet they do. And in this congressional hearings, instead of getting into substantive things like our data that's being sold, or like the way that we're being manipulated to kind of, it's almost like socially engineering every single person to be a blind consumer. Which, by the way, like, that's not unique to them. Like, they've tried to do that for years. Like, companies have tried to do that for years with advertising on television, advertising everywhere, advertising on billboards. They've just found like kind of the perfect machine to do it. But my point is, like, instead of asking these substantive issues in Congress and congressional hearings, and maybe like crafting legislation that specifically targets like these giant megalith companies, instead it's like they're kind of trying to hold these companies to standards from like the 1920s for like coal and steel, right. Which this is not generating coal and steel. It's a totally different industry. But they'll also, like, the thing that's frustrating is that they're also so clueless about technology that the main questions will be like, well, how come my phone listens to me? And it's like, okay, like, how do you even start how does your company make money? I think was like, because they had like a hearing a month back that I listened into, and it was absurd. Like, where it's like they're asking them their business model and how they make money, and it's like, before you kind of pull these people in, you might want to actually have an idea of what they do and how they work, so that you can properly like target kind of more of the issues with it. Anyhow, I'm sorry, that was a rant. No, it mystifies me how like out of touch our government is with the actual issues with these companies and like the monitoring of our data, the money of our data.
They also think they think the internet is one big company or something, because they'll ask Mark Zuckerberg why Twitter is doing this, or why is Twitter, it's like, well, that's not really my company. So it's like,
you kind of can't blame Zuckerberg. Like, he's a millionaire and a billionaire, and he's saving money. I mean, like, and like, why would you, like, you also kind of, he's not getting asked substantive questions. So like the majority of the time he's just kind of explaining the internet to people who've never like used a computer. Like that's most of the hearing. And then it's like, well, you guys maybe watch what what political ads you run or whatever. It never ends up in like a substantive change. And the weird thing is, like Cory, like what you were saying, like some of it's not malicious. Some of it is just the nature of having automated curation, like automated curation of content that kind of drives itself based on users' interests, and then drives them to products that they'd be interested in, have some really dark ramifications because if you don't have somebody like moderating like us from our darker interests, which is like you were saying, like hate, anger, like clickbait type thing, it is definitely going to generate a lot more interest in most people than something that like might actually be true. Like, and so,
well, and one of the biggest challenges is not that we've got some, secret society in Silicon Valley that is doing some Machiavellian, thing, but that we don't have people that are thinking beyond themselves. And so that's the idea. I actually think this is where art comes in. I think art comes in to be the raw nerve in society, to be the thing that is exposing the hurt before people really realize what's going on. But like, for example, it kind of gets into externalities, right? If I am in a business and I find that, I don't know, for whatever reason, let's go back 100 years, right? Let's go back 40 years. So go back 40 years. I've got a business that produces a widget, and that widget has a side effect of having been, it creates some toxic fumes or whatever. And so I take a big pipe and I run the toxic fumes into like the neighboring city, because they don't buy my stuff, because I've got like a local audience, and everybody that I'm interacting with is super happy with what's going on. Like I'm selling them their widget at a great price. They love their widget. They're giving me money. I'm happy because I'm getting the money. They're happy because they're getting the widget. But this other town down the road is being negatively impacted by me just like pumping pollution into their air. That is a problem, because it's not in my best interest to do what's for the greater good. And maybe I'm even unaware that that's a problem. And that's kind of like, you get a room full of developers and you tell them like, let's figure out how to get as many people as possible to stay on our app as long as we possibly can. And no one is asking the question of like, what is this going to do to the neurological development of children?
Yeah.
What is this going to do to the neurological development of a teenage girl when we are literally able to do facial recognition and BMI analyzation and target her with diet ads and all kinds of different things while she is developing and finding her out, and neurologically is in a state that is almost incapable of combating those subtle messages, like an adult might. What's that going to do? And what happens to a society where we have access to that level of psychological digital manipulation? No one's asking those questions, because that's not a factor in the relationship between the app developer and the advertisers that want to advertise on that app. And that's where that relationship is. And however society is being positively or negatively impacted is kind of this amorphous, ill-defined thing that's kind of off in the wings that nobody really talks about or thinks about. But we are literally on the brink of either a civil war or a global societal collapse. I mean, you look nowadays at like things that people were concerned about in the 50s and the 60s. If you read like stuff that Martin Luther King was saying about like globalization and stuff like that, like he was worried about automation ending the workforce back then.
Yeah.
Now we actually have the technology to do that.
Yeah, and then the thing that's interesting too is like I don't know how many people are aware of like just how much this whole COVID thing is going to anyone who was on the fence about automation it has every incentive to develop it now. And so it's like it this did not like slow it down. I think this is actually like it's going to only increase the interest in developing it. Because once again, if you're kind of worried about just profit motive, which most decent businesses are, they're just, they want to make money. We're artists, we're running businesses, we want to make money too, right? Nothing wrong with that. But the downside is if you can automate it, what's going to happen with, like point being like when this whole crisis is over, I wouldn't expect that all those jobs that were lost are going to come back, at least in the same way, because I would imagine, any surviving businesses will have found ways to automate or downsize. And so that MLK concern, like, is anyhow, continue your thought. I'm sorry, I kind of derailed.
No, that's fine. My main thought is I actually think that this is where creativity comes in, because visual communicators, whether you be illustrators, photographers, filmmakers, animators, cartoonists, whatever, graphic designers, we have the ability to communicate complex concepts in really quick ways that are really effective and more emotionally impactful than a lot of other ways of communication. Mm-hmm. And given that, I don't want to say we have a responsibility. We have an opportunity to just raise questions. I've always tried to do that with whatever I'm doing. Is I just want people to think about things. Mm-hmm. I think like you look at Black Lives Matter. Like a lot of people were just unaware of massively problematic systematic racism. They just weren't aware that it was happening. Mm-hmm. And being being made aware of it, they had more knowledge, more thinking, and now they're making decisions with more information that they didn't have before. That's I'm not gonna say that like one of my animations is going to change the world, right? Mm-hmm. But I hope that somebody sees some of that stuff and they go, "Huh, I never really thought about that."
Yeah,
that's what I want. Is I want to introduce a little cognitive dissonance that people have to grapple with.
Yeah, and I definitely have similar thoughts. Like main things I'm hoping, like part of why I wouldn't just isolate what I'm writing to like a Christian bookstore is like the main theme is mental illness, and so It's like I think it's important socially, like across the spectrum, like pretty much. I think it's really important for people to start having open conversations about not everyone being a happy camper, and I do think like what Cory was talking about, like about sunlight kind of illuminating everything. I think that's a perfect example of like kind of what I'm trying to do with my art. And it doesn't have to be like some super serious story. So I think some of the most thoughtful, game-changing stuff probably happens in like children's cartoons. At a young age, I think the kind of provoking of thinking and like, like even avoiding, bad things like otherism, like that Cory and I have talked about like ad nauseum, like and like the problem of like like thinking in teams. Like I mentioned I was rewatching Avatar, the cartoon series, and I was so blown away just by like the moral lessons in that, and like a lot of it does kind of speak against like the whole like we're the fire team and we're the water team, and how there's like kind of problems with that when you start sort of isolating everybody, putting them in like groups and like kind of making others of other groups. It leads to danger. You couldn't in like a heavy literary work like have the impact that like a children's cartoon can have on the minds of like of people to the same extent. So I just wanted to preface that, but what I am trying to do is like get people to think about mental illness and also to speak about it, because I think one of the most alienating things for most people, and this is a byproduct of a lot of social media as well, where it's like you look on social media and like people aren't posting often like, like today I didn't want to get out of bed, like they are frequently like talking about that, like at work.
Oh no!
Freeze for you.
Oh,
you froze a little bit.
I froze for a second.
You froze for a second. You seem to be back now, though.
Yeah. So like, I think I think it's probably a good thing, like that most workplaces is like you don't ask somebody like how you're doing, and they're how are you doing, and they're like, well, like I'm suffering from like most people don't want to be in a scenario like that where you're in a completely open environment. But I do think it's important to have forums and discussions that are open and candid and raw about actual emotional struggles and relational struggles and things like that, because and part of why I'm making art about that is because I saw a hole there. I'm not saying there hasn't been art that's directly touched on those issues, but I totally agree with you, Cory. I feel like there is a way that we as artists can kind of touch on an issue, and with a story, I think, say more than just kind of a long diatribe about the issue. I think with a story and a narrative, you can kind of pull people in and have deeper thoughts and kind of touch on things that make us human, right? Like flaws. And I hope that's kind of where artists can lead people, by kind of breaking a little bit of that programming and a little bit of the social conditioning and a little bit of the, prior to the internet, we still had the same issue, and art always challenged that. Where it's like you had magazines being like, this is what a woman's supposed to look like, and this is what a man's supposed to look like, and this is what you're supposed to buy, and this is, the sort of advertising narrative has always been something that is rife for artists to both promote and then fight against. So I do think there's a way to kind of break that, but it is interesting being an indie creator. Also, we're kind of in the battle against the algorithm.
Yeah.
Because the algorithm, like the internet is very diverse, and that's great, but it also very much favors. It's gotten to a point where it's favoring, like I said, a lot of these companies started out as like these scrappy little companies, but they're not scrappy little companies anymore. These are like mega corporations that the profit margins that they're seeing are profits that have never been seen on Earth before. And so it's sort of an interesting thing, but that's what the internet eventually seems to favor. And we even kind of talked about it before recording, where it's like it kind of makes sense. Like Google, if they're running something, usually it runs efficiently. When they sell it, it usually doesn't run as well.
I've got a historical example to that, because we were talking about like Google SketchUp, right? Mm-hmm. Which people even still call Google SketchUp. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been Google for a long time, but it really went downhill when it went away. I was listening to Great Courses lecture series on ancient Egypt, and the professor was saying one of the interesting things about ancient Egypt is it is incredible what you can accomplish as a society if you think that the leader of your society is God. Like if you think that guy that wears the tall hat is a literal incarnation of a deity, and that if you disobey him, you will be killed. Well, yeah, that you're able to like thousands of years ago raise an obelisk by dropping large sphere stones. Like they literally cut obelisks out of the mountain by just dropping stones and then picking it up and moving 6 inches and dropping a stone again. And then that became like a giant, like obelisk, like the Lincoln, or not the Lincoln, the Washington Monument. The engineering that it would take to do that is incredible, but also the amount of like concerted effort of a bunch of individuals working together is amazing. And what you have now is like that style of creation where there's no questions being asked. No one, somebody who's swinging a hammer for the pharaoh isn't going to be like, I don't know if this is a good design.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, I'm going to swing this hammer because he's,
I don't want to
die. he's raw incarnate. And if I don't, I die,
Yeah.
And, but nowadays, there's fewer people. You don't need as many people because they've built systems and software and AI and algorithms to like magnify the individual. But they're still not questioning it, And so like, what if one of the pharaohs decided, instead of building like the coolest tomb ever, instead of doing that, I'm just going to annihilate everyone who isn't an Egyptian. They could have done that. You know what I mean? And so like, and still, I don't think anybody in Egypt thousands of years ago would have questioned that because that was just what God wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nowadays, if the software company decides that it's best for the software company to teach 5-year-olds to be addicted to 6 hours of device screen time a day, regardless of that getting in the way of their development or their education, their ability to think for themselves, no one questions it. They just build the obelisk that does that. And that's kind of the problem. Anyway, so all of that is to say, I think there's an opportunity out there to topple Goliath. And I think that the artists and the creators and the writers and the filmmakers are the ones that are going to do it. It's definitely not going to be Congress unless we make them. It's definitely not going to be. And I don't want them to burn. I just want them to have some reasonable fair play. Like if think about it this way, if I was to go to a convention and I was to put a chemical in the water that everybody drank that made everybody hate all of the other artists at that convention and love me, and thousands of people were lining up to pay me money to buy my art, well, that is in my best interest, my selfish interest to do that. Mm-hmm. But there would be a public outcry like you had never heard. I would be strung up. I'd go to prison. I mean, I'd be canceled faster than you could, bat an eye as soon as that story broke. But that's literally what we're doing to humanity right now. Is we've got people that are manipulating people to the point where they don't even realize that the things that they're doing are to the benefit of these giant corporations and not to their own benefit. We are not acting in our own self-interest anymore because we're being manipulated to the point where it doesn't feel like that. Think about this. When's the last time your leg itched instead of not having your phone in your pocket, but you thought that your phone vibrated?
Yeah.
Our brains have actually been rewired.
Yeah.
So that we no longer have like phantom itch. We now have phantom vibration.
Well, and I think that this is also a good thing to discuss because I think as artists, we're in this mode where we're constantly having to think about social media and promotion, right? Because it's like there's this concern that I think most artists have deep down that's like, I need people to know what I do exists, right? Especially as people who, like us who are doing create our own stuff. It's like you want eyes on it. You want eyeballs to see it. You want readers. And so there's this sense, and it's definitely not necessarily wrong as a sense that if you don't have a presence online, you're going to have less viability in our market or less readers and so on. And this can create some good things, which is like the hustle, right? Where it's like you build social media, you start being more present and effective in trying to engage with your audience. And these are all good things. But it can also build really bad habits where it's like, hey, if I forget my phone today, people are going to forget I exist and my art career is going to crumble. Like it can create a very negative too for a lot of artists. And surprisingly, like what's interesting is a lot of this stuff, a lot of this type of thing like can also, like I've had friends who've gone off social media for an entire like month or two and come back and they haven't lost their entire audience. And they haven't seen their career go into shambles. And some of them have had really positive benefits from it, like gotten more clients. Because I think that some of what we're doing is really good for us on social media and engaging with our audience. And some of it's just pure addiction, where it's like maybe we think we're promoting, but then like, I know for myself, like even when I'm looking up reference, like I'm trying to find like, I don't know, like what does this chapel roof look like? Cause I need to draw a chapel roof or something. Right. And while I'm looking for that, I end up going down a rabbit hole of like, well, I'll just read this really quick article about like there was a debate yesterday. Maybe I can read about that. And 10, 20 minutes later, I read an article about a debate and I didn't find the image I needed to work on my work. So I do think it's a good thing to be aware of too, not just as like makers of things who have to use, like this is the game, at least that I think we all play in, which is a lot of online commerce and online content creation. But we also have to be aware of like some of the downsides and how a lot of artists can kind of end up being sucked into that and controlled, Does that make sense?
It does. I think the robots are angry and have started attacking you because your sound just got super weird.
That actually has more to do with the monopoly of Time Warner, which I absolutely hate. They have a monopoly out here, so it's like there's literally no other option for internet.
Yeah, I think one thing that you were saying that kind of stood out to me, and I want to get Scott's thoughts on this because I feel like he's really good at it. Think about how you react when your phone is about to die and you're not near a plug. You know what I mean? Like that's a level of addiction that is like heroin use, like you have a heroin user that realizes that their stash is low. I mean, they start searching, they're going to do anything. And like, what if you're like the other day, my phone died on the way to the store. I was just running a quick errand, throw a mask on, get in, get out real fast. And like my initial thought as I was driving like 2 miles to the store was I should turn around so that I can go get a cord to plug this in. I'm like, there is zero reason for me to need that piece of that little glass rectangle while I'm doing that. But here's the problem with that is, and I'm not speaking from this from a podium of somebody who has solved this problem, but just somebody who's recognized it and is trying to solve it. But as creators, we need boredom. Like it's an essential part of creativity. Every definition of creativity that is out there, every study that has been done, at least in the past 10 to 15 years, really points to the fact that you will not creatively solve complex problems if you are constantly being entertained. And so your brain needs downtime. Neurologists call it the default mode network. You need to be able to daydream. You need to be able to drift. You need to be able to do that stuff. And we literally carry a device with us at all times. I am at this point in time surrounded by 5 screens. I have 5 screens within arm's distance of me right now.
Yeah.
And all of them can deliver literally anything that has ever existed directly to my eyeballs and my ears.
Yeah.
Like I can just, I don't even have to touch stuff. I can say words and a computer will go and get that information from a satellite orbiting the Earth and deliver it to any one of the 5 screens that I want it to right now. That's insane.
And what's
right?
hilarious is like thinking back, like the 1980s, like the late 1980s and early 90s. Like there was I think it was like late 80s when they released the Game Boy, but I know it was definitely like early 90s they had it. And I remember all these like news, specials on like how the Game Boy was going to lead to just like these distracted, like terrifyingly unable to focus children because they're going to have the entertainment at their fingertips anywhere. All they need is a battery. I mean, at least the Game Boy used to run out of batteries. Like this thing doesn't run out of batteries. You just literally recharge it, and you have a Game Boy. You have basically every video game. You have access to film, and that's just on our phone. Right. So, like it is a really unprecedented amount of access we have to things. And I agree with you. Like, I think for thought to kind of happen, for deep thought, and this kind of ties back to like what I was saying about like the humanities in schools, where it's like, there are things that are methodical, where it's like step 1, step 2, step 3. And it's just kind of a very predetermined order that you're following, where you can do that and kind of zone out and not have a lot of focus. And like there's a brief job I had doing data entry for a little bit for a company, and I could do data entry and probably like watch a movie. Like it wouldn't have been a problem because it was so repetitive that it really didn't require like a mass amount of focus. But was I going to like sit down and like why like one of the greatest things for creators to think about, like especially if you have some time to make things, is like actually focus on what you want to make. Like a lot of artists don't think about that. They just kind of make and make and make, but they aren't thinking like, what is it I want to say, And it's going to be really hard to answer that question if you're constantly just inculcated with self-entertainment, like where it's like you're getting entertained by other people's what they wanted to do. It's not really allowing you that space and that time to like think really philosophically about like, why did I get into art? Because usually that actually is a really good leading point to creativity and to guide you where you need to be. But like nobody's going to have those thoughts.
My answer to that question is pretty dark.
I want to hear it. I love your dark.
I've said it over and over and over again, but I'm self-medicating. I don't know that it's super healthy, but like it's keeping the demons at bay. I think that's it. But so the reason that I went down that whole path is Scott is one of the few people I know, who isn't like 70 that doesn't seem to have the same challenges with technology that I seem to have. And I think, you're like, the way you talk about social media, like I could spend 8 hours a day on social media. And sometimes I probably do without even knowing it or whatever, but like, but Scott's able to like sit down and get work done and going around and do that type of stuff. And every time I hear you talk about that, I'm like, it's so interesting because it's so different than my experience. So I'm just curious. I don't know your thoughts on that. Is my perception of you off, or
no, it's not off? But I wish I could say. If somebody's interested, how I do it. I mean the big thing that I try to just eliminate as much as possible is the endless scrolling. Yeah. And there are usually the only time I do that is when there's absolutely nothing else to do, if I'm waiting on somebody for something and I'm kind of in a situation where, okay, well, I guess I'll look at Instagram and there's some drawbacks to it because like I'll scroll through, like I haven't posted on Instagram. I rarely post on Facebook. I mean, I do watch a lot of YouTube content, but that's usually going on while I'm working. And sometimes it can be a distraction. I won't lie, but usually, it's going on. And if I find that it's being a distraction, I'll mute it or whatever until it's a certain task. I find that I'm looking for something on my computer, because maybe I don't organize my files as well as I should. Like, where did I put that? And if a video is playing, I can't remember, so I got to mute it or whatever. But I don't know. I just somehow I kind of I don't know. Sometimes I just figured out how to kind of eliminate most of that. But because of that, sometimes I'm not as informed. Although I wouldn't recommend Facebook as a place to get your news from. And usually if it's something important, somebody will mention it. Like there's some Gary mentioned something in the chat. I don't know if it's true or whatever, but that kind of thing I may not know about unless.
I'm really. That actually makes me want to go. And scroll a little bit.
Find out afterwards, but anyway, so I don't know. I just. The other big thing, and it's hard. Like there's so many things that I want to comment on, but I know it's just going to lead a rabbit hole, and it's not going to change any minds. It's not going to do anything, and it's also not good for my brand if it's like a political thing, and it's like, oh, that makes me mad. Then you want to comment or whatever, and just like that's not going to get me anywhere. So I don't, because that just takes up so much of your time, and it just goes nowhere. And it's just, so I don't know. And part of it, I think it just comes down to, I enjoy drawing. I enjoy creating way more than I enjoy, scrolling, I guess. So I don't know. I wish I could, if somebody wants to, I wish I could tell them how to do it, but I don't really know. It took a while for me to do that, but also it's also like now when somebody says, well, because a lot of people, as an artist, Instagram is the thing. It's not necessarily YouTube, it's Instagram. So people, if they hear you're an artist, they'll say, oh, what's your Instagram? And well, I haven't really posted on Instagram since probably a year. It was probably about a year ago, because it was Inktober, which just started today, I guess. So I did Inktober, and other than I think I did one post that was maybe like one or two posts. Like I think when I launched Making Comics 101, I was going to start posting more, and I just, I had to kind of get rid of it, or not continue doing that. But so, because of that, I don't have all the social media presence that might be more helpful, but I don't know. Yeah.
But you have success on a specific platform, and I think one thing that you're very good at too is and I've seen you do this with a lot of things, Scott, where you will kind of try quite a few different platforms. Like you did this too when you were doing digital products. Like you started with a much broader kind of. I remember when you were first trying it, there were a couple places you were exploring.
Oh, and like Creative Market.
Yeah,
Creative Market's like the biggest marketplace, and I make some sales every once in a while on Creative Market. I make some money on it, but it's nowhere near some of the smaller ones that I've, so it's just, and it's the same thing with the the t-shirt companies. I mean, you can have tremendous success on one and like no success on the other. And like I haven't done, I've got a handful of shirts, and I still get one that sells, continuously sells on like TeePublic, but that same shirt's it just doesn't sell in other places. Why is that? I don't know why that is, but it's just the way it is. So,
but something I was going to say you do well is you'll try these different markets, and then like once you find one that's working, though, you do kind of get attentive with it, which is good. So like I feel like with design cuts, for instance, that's real success, and it's success that once you hit it, you feed, which I think is a really good thing. So it's similar to like your YouTube has grown pretty exponentially, and that is something you do spend time and feed and interact with the audience, and so I think maybe just as an outside observer, I would say like maybe that's part of it too, is like kind of seeing where you're having some rising going,
Yeah.
And
Well,
dedicating some time to those things rather than the chicken with your head cut off, method where it's like, I'm going to try everything. And then
yeah. Well, the interesting thing I'll say about design cuts is, and this goes back to what we were talking about before with whether it's an algorithm or whatever, that, on design cuts, it's one of the only curated marketplace. You can't, not anyone can just join it or whatever. You have to kind of be selected. And because of that, almost every product on there is a quality product because there's a barrier to entry. Now, I mean, I'm not going to say that's the best way, because I also believe that people should be given a shot and have the opportunity to kind of learn on a platform like that. But when you compare to something like that, to compare to like Amazon, where almost anyone can just upload anything, like with KDP, honestly, I don't think I'm being overdrawn. There's a word I'm searching for.
Overly critical?
Not overly critical, but
over exaggerating
or whatever. When I say that about 90% of the book of the books on KDP are just garbage. I mean, that's 90%. That's a big percentage. But that doesn't necessarily mean that those don't sell. But there's just so much of them, and I'm finding that, like, I just came up with a handful of original ideas for t-shirt designs in a very, very popular niche right now. But they're original ideas, and so far I haven't sold any of them because people aren't looking. They're not coming up on the search because there's just so much of the same. You'll find other shirts that are just been so played out and everything, and every single. Because basically what a lot of people do is they'll find a saying and then they'll just change it, do it in a different font or whatever. But when you come up with something original, it doesn't always catch on. But so it seems to me like I do better on the places where it's more possible for the cream to kind of rise to the top.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's one of the major problems with AI right now is AI is a brute force learning. There's several different models of AI development that people could have gone down with, but they went down the road of brute force, which means like it's just a huge amount of information that you throw at it and it processes a huge amount of information. So a new idea doesn't have the same shot as the same idea slightly tweaked,
right?
Because the algorithm has seen hundreds of those or thousands of those or whatever, and it's like, oh, this is another one of those. It sees something new, and humans have this really interesting ability. Like, if a child, my son is 2 years old, he has probably in his life only seen two cats. He's seen a black cat and a white cat. Those are the two cats that we have. But you could show him an orange cat and he would still know it's a cat. You could show him a cat that's a completely different species, or I don't know if species is the right term, but a different type of cat that looks drastically different. He would still recognize it as a cat because humans are very good at kind of adaptation and relational learning because we don't brute force things. He's had very few data inputs to be able to surmise the entire concept of cat. Whereas brute force learning would have to see hundreds of thousands of images of cats before it can identify cats. And if it misidentifies stuff at the beginning, then it begins to categorize things incorrectly. For example, Twitter right now is having a huge problem because people realized that Twitter automatically crops an image in the preview, and it is cropping Black people's faces out. And it's not just people, it's like action figures. I mean, they showed like here's 4 Power Rangers and like one of them's black, and like it like showed like the Power Ranger's chest rather than his face. Like Twitter's algorithm literally doesn't see Black people's faces.
No, really interesting.
Yeah.
I remember that was an issue, like with one of the Xbox things a while back or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
facial recognition too. Like for law enforcement, it has a real problem where
Misidentified. Yeah.
yeah, it misidentifies and it's also very biased. So
Right.
it's kind of like even though it was programmed racelessly, it's sort of the algorithm kind of drives it to be a little racist in its identification because it'll this is the same person, like not even remotely similarly structured person, but it's just they're not white. That's kind of weird, you know.
Right. My point with that was to say, if there was a person that was sitting there and saw Scott's shirt, and that person was the gatekeeper to decide this is something this website promotes or this isn't, that person would be able to tell this original idea has legs. It can go somewhere.
Yeah.
But the algorithm doesn't have the ability to process new information.
Yeah. And it's weird because I have mixed feelings about curation, but I do think there's a place for it and a need for it. And I think it's great that there's things like design cuts. Like sometimes it's nice to have a more open entry, but like weirdly enough, a lot of my musical tastes were informed by like reading Lester Bangs, and it's like, I can't imagine a world where you don't have a decent rock critic, like, don't get me wrong, they can be wrong. Like the critics should be wrong, but you do need some kind of criticism, some kind of curation. I think sometimes, and I do think one of the things lacking with like a Facebook algorithm is like a lot of news can look like news to people. A lot of information can like look validly the same. And so I do think there's also a place for that. I do also have faith in audiences, like in the sense of like, I do think when people are fed good food, they get healthier. And so I tend to think, and I tend to think when people have the option, like they will actually go for good food a lot of the time. I tend to think like a lot of why people like buy fast food so often is it's just way more accessible and it's more affordable. So it's like, if people have more healthy options, I think they'd probably pick healthier options. Not always, right? Sometimes people suck, but the point being like, I do think like I think people do have a desire. I just think that unfortunately, like a lot of the market and the algorithm is kind of doing like the writing 101 thing where you generally, like when you get into writing, are supposed to assume the best of the audience, right? Like assume that they can work it out. But I think we've, the algorithm can't work it out. And so they're not going to get it to you, you know what I mean, until it's bluntly obvious and literal and so my point is like, I do think if we can work out the algorithm, I think people would be better, would take it better, and would not be against it. Like I have this tendency to believe in that. Like I think good art, if it gets in the hands of people, will rise. I hope.
Yeah, I don't know, Cory, sound like we wanted to chime in. I had something I wanted to say too. So.
No, go ahead, Scott. I was just going to point out Holly's comment, which I think it happened to me and it was really funny. She's saying that this reminds her of when Tumblr will censor anything that remotely has skin color, assuming it's porn. I used to be on Tumblr and I would post time-lapse videos of me inking things, and people liked them, and I wouldn't say that they went viral or anything, but like I was getting good, okay traffic on it. And then as soon as they released that like automated system, it saw my hand and it was like, that's porn, and it like nixed all of my time-lapse videos. I'm like, there's nothing less sexy than me inking a page. It's like, anyway, but I just thought that was funny. But yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just gonna talk about kind of that. There's that line between sort of the curation and something that's open for everyone. Because I do like that. I do like that. the ability for anyone to kind of jump in and learn. But there's also I think there should be something that can, I don't know where you kind of draw that line or whatever, how you get the best of both worlds. Because if you look at like the whether it's t-shirts or books on Amazon that are independently published, like I said, there's just a lot that just really aren't that great. Whereas if you go into like a Target or a Walmart, I mean, everything there has to go through a publisher, so the quality and everything, I mean, visually it's a lot better. But does Amazon care? Does Amazon care about the quality as long as it's selling?
No,
I mean,
they have no need to care about the quality of stuff because that's not in their best interest. Whereas a publisher, they have to care about the quality of stuff because they don't own the market. There isn't a monopoly where, like, people don't even think of online shopping as different than Amazon anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they owned that entire thing, so much so that people will tell people in a brick and mortar store, "Now let's get this on Amazon." Like, they don't say, "I'll get it on the internet." You know what I mean? Like, and so Amazon doesn't care because it's not a quality game for them anymore. It's just they are the game.
And with
I think the kind of quality they're concerned about is like our shipping is going to be on time. You know what I mean? Like it's more about like delivery and like, but it's a free market on Amazon where it's like they're going to ship whatever, So
is that do you think that's going to just affect the quality of artwork? Because Amazon's the biggest marketplace in the world. So does that mean that sooner or later people aren't going to care about, they're just going to condition themselves that, this must be professional. I bought it on a store on the internet.
So I have a thought on that just kind of goes back to like when graphic design started being heavily done on Photoshop, like early Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
Where everything was airbrushed.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you think back to then, there's this brief period of time where like every graphic design looked like a rainbow had been vomited onto a page, and used like drop shadows and like every single layer effect that's on Photoshop. That's like a click of a button. And for a little bit, that was kind of the trend, like, because it was just so new and so different. And very similar things happened with printing. If you look at, like, I know a lot of our listeners are like big fans of 90s comics, and there are some cool things about some 90s comics. And I was madly in love with Image when I was a kid too. But if you look back at some of those books, like the color choices, as opposed to like the color choices when it was offset on pulp, are not the greatest on a lot of those books.
Heresy. Can't believe you're saying this.
And so like the color choices were partially that way because you had digital coloring, and so and a better process to do full color printing on glossy paper, which they'd never been able to do before. So there was a cool part where it's like, okay, we're getting better quality of printing, but there was also a downside, which was like, hey, there's this new thing we can do, so we're going to use every color in the rainbow, and we're going to make everything shiny, right? Everything, like a plaid shirt, it's going to have like 5 shines on it because we can. So I know this is a long-winded way of saying it, but I'm saying, like, I think you're probably going to have a market freak out where people do forget, but I think like what'll happen is similar to what's happened with graphic design, where the cream still rises to the top. Like, like people like fonts, but now they still stray towards, like, if they're going to pay big money for a graphic designer, they want current type.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. For instance, if you go on Amazon and you type in blank comic book pages or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you look at what's up there, and then you compare it to, like, say, my book. If my book was to show up next to one of those, and there is something I can do. I can run ads against certain products like that, and that might help. But just natively, I mean, if my book was against any of those books, I think people are going to rather buy mine because it looks better. And if they look inside, they're going to see there's more than just the pages. I put extras in it and everything. But the thing is, if mine doesn't show up there, people don't even know about it because of the algorithm. Then it doesn't matter, how much more time or how better you are.
That's the struggle we're all in, right? Because it's like that's a similar boat to like our comics and animations and stuff like that. Like if you see a lot of indie animation out there, like, and then you put Cory's indie animation next to it, it's absurd the difference. Like, and I'm not saying there's a crap load of great indie animators out there, but I'm just saying like yours looks very professional, very clean. Like there are things you're doing in After Effects that are really sophisticated compared to a lot of indie animation. And so Cory's challenge isn't like to make your animation look good. Like that's one challenge, but you're fitting that and meeting that. It's to get it on that shelf or the virtual shelf right next to the other competitors. Same with you, Scott. Like I think you're right. Like if a store, like if you had a physical store and you had that blank comic book one and then your well-designed one, I think 9 times out of 10 people are going to go for the well-designed product. Like they just do it inherently. Like, half of why people like Coca-Cola has nothing to do with the flavor. I think it's really brilliant branding and beautiful typography. And I mean, it is it's a tasty product and it's addictive too. So there's that. But the point being, like, that's one of the things that's always kind of held it up, like versus like RC Cola or like an off brand, is like the branding and the packaging. Same with Apple. Like Apples are excellent machines and the quality is great. It's gone downhill a little bit in the last few years, but they still have like this beautiful branding and packaging that now everyone emulates. But everyone forgot about beautiful packaging in computers until Apple did that. You know what I mean? Like most computers were just kind of a box with a crappy picture of the computer on it. And, you pull it open and usually it would have like a bunch of staples in it. Like,
So the return of Steve Jobs happened during a time when the most popular computer had cow print on
I was just bring up the Gateway.
Right? Remember Gateway computers, the cow print? Holly's got a good comment here. Early Photoshop is like how kids add 1 million transitions on presentation slides. I always make fun of I always make fun of anybody who starts editing video. The first thing they're gonna do is, it's like a moth to the flame, is like, oh, let's use let's use like the page turn transition. Yeah. Let's use the one that like turns everybody into a cube and then rotates. Let's do the one where like it like falls away like a leaf. Like cross dissolve and cut. You don't need anything else. Stop using everything else.
I love these photo frame. My dad's got a photo frame and it's got all the, like those transitions. Like it's just like,
I feel like if you're gonna do that, at least it should have like the laser war background photo, like school photo. But like Scott, like my point is, I do think that it is a smart bet to bet on good design, because 9 times out of 10 it's always going to do better. And and don't forget that era in the 90s where everyone's cousin with a computer was a graphic designer, and they just forgot about kerning until like 5 years later, or actually a couple years later, some badass designers with the digital tools were like, okay, you got a font, check out my beautifully kerned, like, beautifully structured lettering, and you tell me who you want to hire. And usually, 9 times out of 10, like people can't even explain why.
I wanna argue just a little bit here, because
there is,
you're using 90s comics as an example of eventually good design wins out. The comic makers in the 90s that were doing that are millionaires. and the generation that came after them are living below the poverty line. Like it's
no, on a sales level,
comics got better.
Yeah,
in general, but that doesn't mean that those that were creating comics are better off than they were in the 90s when you literally just were like,
hardly any comic is outselling Spawn #1 when that came out. Like that era of comics and sales is
right.
absurd. And part of the innovation was the fact that they did print like these beautifully glossy, like they put the money into the printing, bidding.
And I will
the art would sell.
Yeah, so, and I will still argue that Spawn #1 sold so well because that was the first time that anybody ever saw that color green on a cover of a comic book.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the red and then you have the green. So you got the hue contrast, and then it's still that cover is still an incredible cover.
Oh yeah. And I still love McFarlane, and I think he's better examples, but there is this thing with the whole Ollie optic coloring at the time, like that whole trend where everything was kind of blurry and shiny, and like colorists have gotten better since then. You're right, the market not reflective, but my point is I think you'd have a hard time selling a lot of those books nowadays.
Sure.
Next to a lot of what's been done, although honestly, a lot of mainstream coloring is still pretty terrible.
I just want to say I will argue with it that I do think it's a better play to go with quality, but I don't think it wins out 9 times out of 10. I mean, listen to this. Listen to this. Right. The Bachelor and The Bachelorette are some of the most popular TV shows out there.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go through point by point by point by point. McDonald's is the #1 hamburger place. That place tastes like crap compared to like a local mom and pop shop that
or
really
like an In-N-Out. Corey, you'll come around.
In-N-Out's fine. I don't have anything against In-N-Out other than it's overly hyped. I'm gonna get canceled for that now. That's
true.
That's how Cory Kerr goes down as he speaks out against In-N-Out. I feel like Californians who expats, California expats are like supposed to swear allegiance to In-N-Out. It's an okay burger.
I don't want to hear it, Corey. I'm gonna have to cancel you.
It's okay. I think it's good. It's better than most.
Twitter and try to get Corey canceled for.
We should let's have a Twitter war over something stupid like people worshiping at the In-N-Out cult.
I should be I could start it off by like just starting a rumor and being like, I don't know, when I met Corey, he was actually eating an In-N-Out burger and he was pretty much enjoying it. So I
mean that's the thing is I will eat there, but if I have the option between like a Johnny Rockets or a Smash Burger or what's that one?
It's heresy, man. Heresy.
It's just it's good taste.
Position pretty soon.
For somebody who claims to be a rebel, you sure are falling in line with the masses on the In-N-Out front.
Like McDonald's is a good example of the masses, not necessarily. I mean, every once in a while McDonald's is fun, but
no, you live in California. Step outside of California and talk to a Californian who's left California.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, you're required to, tell people how good In-N-Out is.
When I lived in Portland, that was a bonding thing with almost every single Californian who left, where we would talk about it. It's part of why I really realized how much I love it is I realized I was talking about it like a lost relative, I got, where I was like, I just can't even, there were times where I couldn't even talk about it. It made me so bummed.
And then didn't you go back and have like a double and you're like, oh yeah, it's all right.
No, my wife and I both, when we got back, the first thing we did was stop at an In-N-Out and we were like, oh yeah. Yeah.
I will say this about In-N-Out. So there are all these places that whenever I went to trip on California to California that we would go to. that they didn't have at the time. They didn't have in Arizona. Like I'm trying to think, like Cheesecake Factory, Claim Jumper, those places. We used to go there, and it was like, oh, it was a big thing. When they came out here, I don't think I've ever been there since they came out here. But In-N-Out, I definitely still go. Now, I will sort of agree. I know we're getting off. We're going to have to wrap this up soon because we're at 2 hours. But I will.
This is an important discussion.
I think
it
as far
really
as
is.
fast food hamburgers go, I definitely like In-N-Out. But I mean, it's definitely better than most of the fast food hamburgers. But I mean there's still like you said, more of the, I don't know, you say like Johnny Rockets or something like that.
Well, of course it's not like going to be. I mean, it is
Right.
definitely better than
And it's
Johnny
also the
Rockets.
price.
Their bread is like cardboard, but anyhow, sorry.
No, In-N-Out's got some good stuff going for it. I just think I don't like things that are overhyped. I think it's massively overhyped.
I think it's perfectly hyped because the thing I don't like. Here's the thing: I don't mind things that are overhyped that are good. I think things that are overhyped that are crappy are what's more annoying to me.
No, yeah, sure, but there's still a discrepancy there. Yes, if the discrepancy is larger, of course, that's going to be more annoying. But I overhyped is a problem at any point in time. Like if somebody
can't overhype it,
you can, because if I were to believe what everybody said about In-N-Out, then it should be a mind-altering, life-changing, euphoric event to bite into an In-N-Out burger, and it's just an above-average burger. I'll eat there.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you got to remember, people in California will wait in a line for an hour and a half to get an In-N-Out burger. It gets packed, man. So people do kind of have a religious reverence for it.
I know. And it's cult-like because just down the street, especially in Southern California, just down the street, you could go get a Japanese umami burger, which is going to blow your mind and taste incredible. And what is it, $3 more?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Okay. So when I lived in Long Beach, there's a place called TK Burger that's award-winning as one of the best burger joints in California, right? I would still go to In-N-Out. And TK Burger is arguably better, but they're not a chain, and for a chain In-N-Out's the best one. Yeah, I don't think it's better than Johnny Rockets.
Have you had Johnny Rockets? I was actually thinking of a different one, and I can't remember the name of it now. Johnny Rockets is pretty gross, but yeah, they're all right, but their burgers are that's okay. But Smash Burger. You got it.
I don't even know what Smash Burger is, dude. That might be the problem.
Do me a favor, go find a Smash Burger somewhere.
Are they in California?
I think so. They're everywhere.
Huh.
I mean, I live nowhere, and if there's, I mean, I don't have a Smash Burger here, but let's see, Smash Burger, California.
I'm curious now. And then I do agree with Scott. We're going a little long, but I am really enjoying this conversation about hamburgers. I love hamburgers, by the way.
LA, Sacramento, San Jose.
Okay. I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, I haven't been to Smash Burger, but we do have them here. So
Roseville, Marina, San Jose, Carson, San Clemente. They're all over the place in California.
Yeah, I just I'm also when I get my In-N-Out, I do animal style, with animal style fries. Yeah. Just I make it ridiculously unhealthy and wonderful.
Yeah,
but yeah,
Smash Burgers for a chain is far superior to In-N-Out, but there's no drive. There's no drive-through.
Probably we'll have to revisit this debate. I feel more heated than I have about the whole political. This is making me more upset than the presidential election.
These are the arguments that I don't get into on Facebook. This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, this is how you lose friends. This is
how I saw you guys arguing about what's better, Smash Burger or In-N-Out.
No, it's true. I think Cory and I just unfriended each other on Facebook.
Actually, the algorithm knew that I wanted to, and it just did it for me.
I love it.
That's what happened.
All right. Well, we figured out our burger tribes. So in our fast food wars, man, it's gonna get gonna get crazy.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. There's some fast food militias out here. All right. This has been fun. I think the roundtable thing worked. I think we should do this more often every once in a while.
Shake Shack is the place I met instead of Johnny Rockets.
Yeah.
Shake. We just got those not too long ago. I haven't been there either. But
Shake Shack's tasty as hell, dude. Yeah.
Shake Shack's good.
Yeah. There's a really good one right off PCH.
Gary says next week Jack in the Box tacos. I will say, if there is ever a war where we need to just like somehow annihilate a country's ability to like grow stuff in the ground, should just drop massive amounts of Jack in the Box tacos. It's got to be worth those things. That I mean, like they're tiny, and you eat half of one, and you're like, I don't know if I can ever eat again. That was so heavy, because I think you drink about a gallon of hot grease.
Yeah, so like when I was young and early in college, I lived off of those things, and part of it was because I you do occasional like drinking with friends, and there's nothing better after like a long night of drinking when you're a young man to once you kind of sober up a bit, go pick up some of those amazing.
Okay, when I was in college,
contraptions.
Yeah,
because they're like what, $1 for 2, so we'd get like 10 of them or 20 of them. Yeah, go ahead, Cory.
No, I was gonna say, like when I was in college, McDonald's did the 29-cent hamburger deal.
Oh yeah, I remember that guy.
And they had a limit of 10. You could only buy 10 at a time. And I was so broke that I would bum a ride to McDonald's because I was like hungry broke, like I didn't know what I was gonna eat next. $3.11. You could get 10 of those and a small strawberry milkshake. And I would like live, and there is nothing in this world more disgusting than reheating like a 3-day-old 29-cent hamburger from McDonald's in the microwave or whatever.
Yeah, especially if it's a cheeseburger, because the cheese is all like crusty, and like the edge of those burgers just like turns into this like crusty, just
right.
Oh, man.
I will say maybe that reheating a Jack in the box of tacos several days later, that might be bad, because there's that part of the shell that doesn't crunch. It was at one point in time crunchy, but then became so saturated with the grease that you're kind of like gnawing on it as if it's like shoe leather, trying to break it.
I don't think Jack in the Box tacos were ever crunchy. I don't think they were supposed to.
They're not soft shell.
They're just kind of a webby, blobby taste of, I don't know. But every once in a while, like I will still, because of that past, I will still kind of, when I'm like, if I go to a Jack in the Box, I'll be like, yeah, throw in some tacos too, and then I have
might as well.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
What's a box of 30 tacos? Like $2? Yeah, toss that in there. I'll bring that home. Gnaw on it for a little bit. Nosh on that. Trying to break through the turtle-like eggshell that you've got on the outside of that taco.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Gary. I feel the same way. They are amazing and terrible and amazing. I agree.
Oh man, yeah.
All right. Well, I think this went well. We talked about problems with the interwebs, which from what I hear, I think your phone can record things. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm prepping for a congressional hearing for it, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, don't prep. Just whatever questions you don't know, ask those publicly in front of the entire world on camera. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then we've talked art, we've talked our art weeks, and we've talked about how In and Out is the best ever. And with that, we'll just call it a day. So why don't we tell everybody where to find us? So you can find me at joshuakimball.com. And if not there, you might find me eating an In-N-Out burger at an In-N-Out, which is like the best hamburger ever. And then Scott, where can people find you?
It's just embarrassing at this point, Josh.
I
You're
don't
just
know if
embarrassing
still-
yourself.
Honestly, I don't know if In-N-Out's still open right now. But I feel like I can get one.
I don't even have one near me. I would have to drive 4 hours.
I can walk to mine.
250 miles from the nearest In-N-Out.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you can find me at circworks.com. I got like I said, if you want some Halloween tricks and treats or whatever design wise, you can find that on there. My digital product, the amazing comic book world builder, will be released at Design Cuts on Monday. And it'll be for a special price. And it may not return to that price. Anyway, be on the lookout for that. And that's pretty much. And then on my YouTube channel, I've got I'm doing Making Comics 101 live. So check that out.
I love it, and I'm actually excited to see that. And I think in those cases, this is one of those scenarios where this is really good quality stuff. So you guys should support the quality, prove that quality sells. All right, and Cory, where can everybody find your work and whatnot?
I'm gonna throw down a challenge. That's what I'm gonna do instead of going to find my work. Okay, so do you have a way for people to donate money to you, Josh, like a Patreon or a coffee or something like that?
No, I don't. But
I was gonna have people vote with their dollars.
Like it.
Anyway, it's not gonna work anymore. Never mind.
I have a Patreon.
Yeah, but I wasn't arguing with you about. I just want Josh to see financially that people are willing to spend money to prove that like Smashburgers or Shake Shack is significantly better than In-N-Out. But it's not going to work. So instead of that, just go to CoryKerr.com.
To be continued. But CoryKerr.com. And if you are kicking in money, you should kick in Cory some money for,
Yeah. I got a little, there's a little tip jar down there. Ironically, it says next to it, buy me a taco. Probably not a Jack in the Box taco, but yeah, no, you can check out my website. It's got animations on it. I'm doing some stuff on Instagram and Twitter occasionally and whatever, but on YouTube. And you can see me and Josh and Scott on Monday nights on 48 Hour Art Check. And you can see me and Kathy Moore Wilson on Wednesday afternoons on 48 Hour Art Check. And there's if you go to that link tree down there, there's a Slack group that you can jump into if you want to join in that. We're kind of discussing different things. I might put the debate of which burger is best to that group and see what they say. But I feel like we need to have some sort of draw off or something, some sort of competition to end this debate.
We'll come up with it. I think at the end of the day, the next time we meet up, we should eat both and do a taste test.
Yeah.
We could put it on YouTube or something.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna live stream you eating a smash burger, and I like animal style double doubles. They're good. Yeah,
I mean, you really might because I have this suspicion that this might just stem from you don't have one near you. That's my theory.
Your entire opinion is based on the fact that you left and absence made your heart grow fonder. So yeah, I don't think that's it.
My return, it wasn't it was oh yeah, this was actually worth all that sadness and missing because it's great.
So as I have the opportunity, there's one freeway that takes me out of the state that I live in. Mm-hmm. That's it. As I go down that freeway, about 4 hours south of me, there is a smash burger next to an In-N-Out. It's not even a contest. Not even a temptation.
I gotta try. Okay, well, I'm gonna try this, and we will find out. So, all right. Wow, this is really kind of funny. A lot of people in the chats are getting in on this business too. I like Holly's comment, tacos shouldn't have a rhyme.
That's the best description of that ever. Yes,
Yeah.
that is true. There is a part of that taco that is literally inedible. And if you try to eat it, people are like, what are you doing? That's the part of the taco shell you throw away. All right.
All right. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. We will see you guys next week. And actually, we'll probably see you guys on Monday on the 48-hour art check. And yeah, thanks to everybody in the chats who joined us. This was a fun one. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.
See ya.